All right, here we go, baby. Back again, 2 Down, 1 Over podcast. I'm Josh Mason. This is Matt Flanagan, and we are here with Coach Matt Samuel. This guy is a legend, has 5 state titles under his belt. I'm super excited to hear from him, Matt. I hope you feel the same way.
Oh, I'm super excited. I'll tell you a quick story. So I'm getting to know Coach a little bit better and better. I've known him for the last 2 years in passing, and we started this podcast, and we invited him out one night to speak to the basketball guys. And I didn't think much of it. I went out, a bite to eat, and I heard him speak, and I got the chills. I was like, this guy's unbelievable. I said, this is amazing. And, I talked to Josh right away. I said, we got to get him on the podcast. And, one thing that I'm impressed by is your humility. Like, I just found out you had 5 state titles. I knew you won a state championship before, but then I found out you had 5. I'm like, yeah, I didn't know this. Like, right? That's crazy. That's insane. So I'm super excited to have Coach here, and
right. So Coach, tell us a little bit about your backstory. As a kid, where you grew up, sports you played, things you went to, how you got educated, things like that.
So I'm a 1993 graduate of Dallas High School. When I grew up in the back mountain here, I'm a lifelong resident of Dallas. And so when I was growing up here, I played a lot of soccer. I'm not a big guy, so I couldn't play like football or anything like that. And so I played a lot of soccer growing up, and that involves a lot of running and so forth. But as I got into high school and into middle school, I started noticing that there's just no way that I was going to be able to excel in that sport. I was good, but I wasn't really that good. And I knew something that I could do was running. My father was a runner. He ran at Juniata College out in middle western Pennsylvania. And so, he just said, why don't you give this a try? And so started joining up. I joined cross country and in middle school, and things just kind of ran from there. When I was in high school, we had some very good teams at Dallas. I had a really great coach, Bill Cavache. And, I started noticing that, this is something that I can do and that I can excel at. I was starting to, do well and be successful in a lot of races and so forth. So became a district champion individually, was on some district championship teams in track and field, and then started getting noticed by some colleges, and particularly my senior year, I really just started kind of coming out like gangbusters in the fall of my senior year, and really just got a lot of interest from universities. I ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh, and I was a 3-sport athlete there: track and field, cross country, and indoor track. 4 years there. I was a team captain. And the reason why I went there, and the reason why I tried to do this stuff in high school, was I wasn't really the most talented athlete. I really like to be on good teams. That's the thing that drives me the most. So when I was there, and the reason why I went there is they had a good team, they had a great coach, and I was like, I really just want to be a good team. I knew that I wasn't going to be the top person, going to national championships and winning collegiate races in Division I is just very, very, very difficult to do. So I was like, you know what, I just want to be on a good team and be a part of this thing. So as I was there, I started developing, kind of a sense that, like, I like doing this and I like working hard, and that was instilled in me since I was a young lad here. And I said, I really think that I would be good at coaching. And my college coach said that to me. He said, hey, listen, you're going to come back here one day, and you're going to be like this really great coach that coached a lot of really great athletes. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I started realizing, I'm like, I like that. I like the team aspect of this stuff. When I got out of college and I graduated in 97, I went immediately and started coaching with my high school coach, and 20 years later, that was it. So, just the whole team aspect of that and stuff is really what drives me to excel. Like it replaced like the ability of me wanting to do well for myself individually, and that just developed a whole philosophy that we had when I was coaching at Dallas for the last number of years. And
That's awesome. So like for me, endurance running is still like kind of a new thing, and you know, we've got a lot of cross country track runners and stuff, and you know, some of the bigger names like Nick Hockenberry, Madeline Keating, Abby Pacheski, like some of the Hedgeland, like some of these. Like we've been forced to really like understand it more, and I think like 10 years ago, I thought it was just going out and running, but it's not that. There's so many different styles of running, and really over like quarantine, COVID, that's when I really like dug in and got into it myself. And like, man, it's different, you know, like that's a whole different mentality, because you got to do it so much, you know. Basketball, there's all these skills, and you know, other sports, there's all these skills, and like there's an IQ to cross country, there's an IQ to pacing and to track and stuff. So, you know, maybe you can touch on a little bit of that. So your background running, okay, which I hear you're a very good runner. I feel like you sold yourself short. You know, I feel like you sold yourself short there a little bit, because I keep hearing you were a great runner, but you have this knowledge, and then you take it into coaching, and then like you understanding that there's an IQ to this sport,
right?
You know, if you could touch on that a little bit.
So when I became a really smart runner was when I started coaching. So I actually say to myself now, I'm like, darn, I wish I was coaching myself.
Oh.
And now I had great coaches, so I don't want to dismiss them at all. But the whole thing is that you see a lot when you're on the sidelines. Like I always tell that to injured athletes. I'm like, you should pay attention to what's going on out there, because you will learn a lot by what you're seeing. So I actually learned a lot from that. And then I started getting really invested in it. So I became USATF certified. Like I became like a level 2 certification on that, and it was so intense. Like, you know, biomechanics and, you know, biochemistry and all this stuff. I was like, man, this is really difficult stuff to do. But I really just started educating myself a lot with it. And I started thinking and just being very observant. Like I'd like to think that that's one of my gifts. Like I'm really perceptive on things that happen. Plus, if you have a working knowledge of how, you know, things are going, as far as physically when you're out training and doing things, you have a lot better of an insight on it. Not to say that I was that great athlete, and I appreciate that you said that, but you know, like I believe firmly that I was a better coach than I was an athlete. And yeah, there's humility there, but that's the makeup of me. So what I started to determine was, number one, with endurance athletes, it's a lot about patience. Your training is a lot about patience. Like a lot of kids want to get out there, and they're so used to doing other sports, as I was when I was doing soccer and so forth. You're so used to doing other sports that you want to get out there and you just want to hammer right away, and that's it. And, you know, as we know, the body can handle, you know, certain stresses, but man, you can overstress it too. So I used to call it the courage to be patient.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of courage to be patient with your training and, you know, the way that you approach things. There's also, as it is in every other sport, there is, you know, the aspect of your practice. What you do in practice is going to reflect in your performances. So, you know, you have to be able to know that what you're doing, you know, every rep, you know, every mile, every step, you know, is going to go towards those performances. Lastly, and not the only thing, but, you know, we could talk forever on this if we really wanted to. The last thing is that I started to realize that most of the stuff that happens physically and what drives a lot of success there is born what you do after practice and what you're doing to recover and everything that happens outside. And it took a little while for me to figure it out. But I was like, man, what I'm doing after I'm done competing and practicing and doing all these very strenuous things. And distance running and endurance sports in general are very grueling in a different way from other sports. Sure. They really are.
That is the truth.
So I started realizing that what you do outside of that is vitally important. And once I was able to kind of combine those things and then develop an emotional or psychological, you know, an approach to how we would do things, that's when real success started coming around for teams and athletes that I coached. I mean, I feel like for me, it's easier to coach. Like, well, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's not as difficult, I believe, to just coach like one athlete. When you got a bunch and you're trying to get them all to the same place. That's the real skill there, and I like that. I like that challenge, and I like that aspect of sports. I really believe that, you could be a great individual, and I'd like to think that I was that. I wasn't the most talented athlete. I just wasn't. And I had a lot of physical ailments. I had like a couple heart conditions. I have exercise-induced asthma, and so like, I always just felt like I have to outwork everybody,
Right.
and to outwork, outwork a talent. And, being able to instill that kind of work ethic along with those other things that I mentioned is really what was a foundation of what we had at Dallas. And we still do. I mean, it's the same people that I coached with are coaching up there now. So, that's kind of like what makes the program maintain what it was, is just some of those things too.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a huge point, and that's something that me and Matt we try to get across, is the idea of developing athletes is what matters is what you're doing beyond what's required, right? So if you have practice every day or you have a lift every day, the difference is what's the difference between like that good and great? And that's what you hit on, is what are you doing after you already did what was required? Because everybody else is doing the same thing, right? What more can you add to the table? And with this podcast, what we like to do is unveil like those tips, strategies, and characteristics that push you to success or push you to the next level. So being that you were a part of 5 state championship teams, like obviously I feel like you have a lot to offer, and or the experience that you were a part of. Talk about like what is the characteristics? What are the differences? What, from a team that did not win state titles to the teams that did, like what was a common theme that you would say, like, for a team to be successful, this is what I noticed needs to be in place?
Okay. Well, I was pretty fortunate. So I started coaching track before I started coaching cross country. There was just another coach there. And the first year that I started coaching cross country is where I have the state titles from. And not that we were not successful in track and field, we definitely were, but that's it's just a different situation. Same principles, but just a different situation. But the very first year I started coaching, we had a state title. So,
wow.
Like, you start thinking, like, well, I stepped. I didn't certainly think it was easy, because that was very difficult to pull off, right? But you were aware. I'm like, I was lucky enough to see what it was right off the bat that would do it. And we actually had on our first state title team, I think we had like 3 or 4 girls go to Division I universities to compete. So. So one of the things that I noticed was, and we see this a lot in sports, I see it a lot in our school sports and just elsewhere too, when I'm out watching our teams play other teams and just watching things on TV and whatnot, is that the chemistry between your athletes is vital. Like, it just is. Everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction. For the sports that I coached, in particular in cross country, I believe, and I know you guys talk about this a lot too, but I believe that we have an individual side of things. My sport that I coached was really great because I don't have a bench.
Yeah.
You are what you are. You prove it that way. So one of the things that we started to instill in athletes and start talking about on a regular was, what, we're all going to be in this thing together. So in cross country, you have 7 athletes that are on a varsity team. And 5 of them score and 2 help out with the scoring by displacing other runners from other teams. Okay. Now, the best part of it, there's some bad parts to it, but there's some good parts to it too. The best part of it is that by driving yourself to be a great athlete, to do your best individually, you are helping the team. It is perfect for that, because the number 1 runner is driving the number 2 runner. So, let's go to the last runner. Last runner on your team, even if they're not in the top 7, is driving the next to last runner to be better. They are. And so that goes all the way up the chain. And once you start seeing that, and embracing that kind of philosophy and everybody pulling in the same direction, then you really start seeing the physical things that you're just doing on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you can go out and run 5-6 miles and whatever and not get any better if you don't have a burning desire to do it. I felt like, and I said this, and Maddie's heard me say this before, is that I never put like my physical talents up against anybody, but honestly, my desire to attain and to achieve, I will put that up against a lot of people in the world. Like, not like I'm trying to be better, but like I'm trying to do everything in my power to help out everybody. And once you embrace that philosophy, you can build anything on that. You can build state championships. You can build individual runners. And it's not to say that we haven't had great individual runners. I'm fortunate enough to coach a girl who just qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon, Reagan Rowe. She was an All-American. She was a 2-time national qualifier in high school, All-American in college a couple times over. I mean, she's just, a solid athlete. I coached Dom DeLuca, who was a state champion individually. Allie Rome, Reagan's sister, was a 2-time state champion. And, they had physical talents that were above mine. But it was the embrace of, we're going to work hard together and we're going to pull this off together, that drove them to be great individuals and at the same time have a lot of team success. And that was really, I believe, the tenet of what got everybody and helped us to achieve what we did as teams and as individuals. It's it's spectacular when I look back on it.
That's awesome. I think I love how you touched on chemistry too, and I think that's huge. And like, to understand that cross country is more than just going out and running. And yes, you need an IQ, but then you need chemistry, and chemistry is a big thing in all sports. And when you win and you're in season, and that's, to me, that's a lot on the coach, and that's a lot. I think that is a compliment to you, because you've had so much success in developing this chemistry. And one of the things that you had said to the basketball guys that I think that really hit me, and you saw it too, it hit a lot of the guys. When you told a story about one of your state championship teams, the girl hurt her foot. And
broke her foot
and continued to run the race, and she did that for her team because that chemistry was so strong. And that's what hit me, and that's I was amazed by that. That's what gave me the chills, that this girl, and I don't remember her name, and you can touch on this a little bit, but she finished this race and she's sobbing after the race, and she said, I did this for my team. If you could touch on that story a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you what. So, that's probably the one that I get asked about the most whenever I'm talking in, seminars or camps or clinics or whatever. And it just is a great story. And it hits home for me because, my athletes are personal. This is my kids. I don't have kids. I've never been married. And the students that I teach and the athletes that I've coached and so forth, they really become like a part of my life. So, this young lady, Kensley Carestis, she was running for us in 2005, and 2 years before that, we had won a state title, and we were on our way to trying to win another state title, and there was things that were besetting us, and it gets to be a long story if I go into that stuff, but sweet are the uses of adversity. That's what William Shakespeare said. And, you never know when it's going to really hit you. And it hits all the time. It hits us all in life, too. Sure, I mean, this all applies to our everyday life. And, of course, it's hit us a lot in the last couple of years, of course. But this young lady was running in the state championships. And the state championships, if you're unfamiliar with it, is 200 runners going off the line at once and then collapsing down onto each other. I mean, and this is the best of the best in the state. And, we were down in Hershey and a little, the race is 5K, so 3 miles plus. And a girl stepped on our girl's foot. Now, this girl was probably our second runner. She was second in the district a week before that. And she went on to Monmouth University and ran there for 4 years. So, I mean, she was great. But she was in the race, and somebody stepped on her foot, and she knew it was broke. And that's it. Well, it's still going. I mean, you're going up and down on hills and stepping on that foot for 3 miles, It was 600 meters into the race. I mean, it's not really that far in. So I knew something was wrong. I'm standing on the sideline, and I always tell the runners, never look at me. Don't look at me. It freaks me out because I want you to pay attention on what you're doing, right? And she looked over, and she said, Coach, I broke my foot. And what do you say?
Right.
I want to say, drop out.
Right.
You know, but there's hundreds of people there. Like, what are you going to do? And it's actually a little shameful in my mind. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, you know. But I, of course, you know, put the priority. But she stays in the race, and she finishes, and of course they take her shoe off after the race, and she's, you know, in our top 5. Doesn't place as well as she could have. I mean, she could have medaled in the state meet, I'm sure of it. And so she pulls it off, and, you know, it swells up really bad. And the doctor's like, oh, yeah, it's broke. You know, like the medical staff, that's broke. So we're carrying her to our tent and so forth. And it takes a little time for them to tally up the results to let you know whether or not you've won. And we find out we won. Of course, everybody's going crazy and, you know, screaming and yelling and crying, and I'm crying and hugging. And the girls, you know, the news people come over, you know, the local news, you know, television news comes over, and, you know, newspapers come over, and they say, we heard you broke your foot. And she's sitting on there by herself. She's just sitting underneath the tent. And they said, how do you finish? And I'm like curious about this myself. You know, like, how the heck do you do that? Like, I don't know that I'm doing that. And she just deadpanned it, like straight out, didn't say anything else, and just said, I thought about my team and how I didn't want to let them down.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't drop out. And I'm like, how do you coach that? You don't. And maybe it's a philosophy that just kind of got in there, and she's a wonderful girl. And you wouldn't really expect it out of her. She's such a sweet girl, and you know, you didn't really expect that, but boy, you can rise to the occasion when you have other people together, you know, and when you have, you know, sticks together are unbreakable, you know, that's the side of it. And that's always something that I draw on. Like, that's that kind of philosophy that you need to have, you know, and it's great to be individualistic, and to want to be, you know, recognized for your efforts, you know, in any walk of life. And that's really great. But to do that, and at the same time, you're like pulling everybody with you, and you're demonstrating everything that you really believe. And that kind of philosophy for us, I'm always like, man, I'm put aside. Like, you know, I mean, this is unbelievable. So those are the kind of things that, you know, that you don't always see. Right. You always see with the know, victory and the medals and so forth, but you don't see those kind of success stories and so forth. So, and that was built into, you know, a lot of our teams. You know, we weren't always the best, but culture. Yes, it is. It's a culture, and, you know, and for us. And my friend is a coach at the university, at Shippensburg University. We always talk about it's a lifestyle. Yeah. You know, you got to live it, you know, every day. And, you know, for the physical side of it, it's every rep. You're thinking about, like, this kind of stuff. And it's not being like, you know, you have to be intense all the time with it, but it's just knowing that this is all going in that bank. And when it counts, can you make it happen when it counts? And if you live that all the time, and you have that kind of lifestyle, and you're eating right, and you're sleeping right, and you're doing all those things, when you need it, you're going to be able to rise above a broken foot. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's
an amazing story, and hats off to the individual for finishing, right? You know, we talk about a championship culture, all right? We have a coaching staff here in the team that's part of this brand, and our members within it. But we talk about that, you know, cultivating that championship culture. And that, I mean, that, I think that goes to your culture, why she finished. My next question on that, though, is, so not everyone's built like that, right? So what would you say is the difference between the person that says, I'm going to keep going and do this for my team, or I'm stepping out of the race right now? And for that person that says, I'm stepping out, can you teach that? Can we overcome that mentality to go and to say, hey, I'm doing this for the team?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I have no doubt about that. And in fact, as you were saying it, I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And let me tell you why. I love the athletes that I've had that have been successful as far as recognition and state titles and individual state titles and All-American and going to college and running. And a lot of athletes that I've been with have done some spectacular things. In track, I coached Paige Selinsky with our sprints coach, Ed Radzinski, up at the school, who's taken over for me in track. And you see what drives them. And, I mean, she's a perfect example of that stuff. And those are really great success stories to talk about. Ed Radzinski and I share another thing. We love the success stories that nobody sees except for us.
Right.
And I have like a bunch of those, and I love seeing athletes that you never expected to do anything get better. I have one. It was on the first boys state title team that we had. And he came out as a sophomore, and I knew him and I knew his family, but he's not much of a runner. Like, he just wasn't much of a runner, especially to begin with, very heavy-footed. But he came in with a lot of work ethic. But we used to do this 2-mile time trial on the first day of practice. Like, you're in August, and like first day of official practice, so I could judge where everybody's at in their fitness levels, and so that I could, think, what I have to do to program paces and do all those things that you have to do as a coach. And this kid ran, 18, 19 minutes and for 2 miles. I mean, that, and Reddy, that's, I don't mean to dismiss anybody,
Right,
but if
right.
you're going to be competitive and so forth, that's
a
not
long
really
shot,
it.
right.
So fast forward 2 years, this kid's a senior, and he's just kind of working his way up. And we get to the state championship race, and he's in the top 7. He's our 7th guy. And this kid runs on the state course, which was really difficult at the time. He almost breaks 18 minutes, which he almost did for 2 miles. Now he's running 3+ miles now under that, and on a state championship team. And you can build it.
Yeah.
You can get people to overcome. I think that, I see this a lot in the classroom too, and coaching is an extension of the classroom, right?
Sure.
So the education side of it, all coaches really are educators. They really are. I mean, this is life that we're trying to prepare our students for, and so that's all part of it. So I see it in the classroom too. Like, just because you can't do something off the bat, there's a differentiation to things where you've got to try different angles in order to do that. And yeah, it could be built. The girl that broke her foot she was the homecoming queen, and everybody loved this girl. She was the quaintest girl, the sweetest girl in the school. No one had any bad thing to say about her. And yet that day, she's all of a sudden going to rise up out of, if you'd have asked me, there have been girls that I've coached that if I was going to get into a fight in the street, I would want them backing me up.
Right.
No joke. I know ones that would literally get into a physical altercation if they had to. This wouldn't have been one of them.
Right.
So that was built. And so I believe that you can do that. And, it's just getting, I think, certain athletes to see that, individuals to see that too. That they can and that they are capable. For us, the problem always is that it takes a long time, and that goes back to being patient and having the courage to be that stuff and knowing your stuff. A lot of our athletes now, they don't realize what hard is. And technology for our sport has kind of gone into a different way. You have GPS watches that tell you your paces and so forth. I'm not actually a fan. I'm good with it in training, but I don't I didn't, when we were doing hard stuff, I'm take the watch off. We're going to find out. You're going to tell yourself what you're at, whether you're capable of doing this. So a lot of it comes from education. A lot of it comes from, knowing when to tell them they need to work harder. Kick someone in the rear a little bit, or to give them a hug, and knowing that stuff. And I'd like to think that I knew my athletes well enough to know. And I was pretty tough as a coach. It's no quorums about it. You ask my athletes, they'll tell you. But I was tough for a reason, because I knew what they were going to face after they left me was going to be tough too. Yeah. So that's a little backstory on how you probably can get. You never know till you get a chance, and you know what? They can be. So what if they're not the most physically talented? They can give you an emotional lift when you need it. That's priceless. It's priceless.
It's awesome.
Mike T.
Yeah, dude, and that's it. And I think one thing that I tell other people is you have an impact on the basketball team. You do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and Mikey T is an example of that. Mikey T comes in the game for 30 seconds, hits the game winner, and that's a super important game for us, because we have Cumbo out, we have guys still figuring out the chemistry deal, and then this guy comes in, steps up, and gets us that win, and that's huge. And So yeah, but as we're closing up here, you touched on a lot of great things, and thanks for everything you do for the basketball team, and thanks for coming out today. And we got a couple like just final questions for you. And I think one thing that hearing you talk, and is there any like aha moment that you had? And I can relate to you as like, I look at myself as a basketball player. I loved it. It was amazing. And then as I got to be a coach, I learned so much more about myself. And like, man, I wish I coached myself. I wish I knew this stuff. And like, I love coaching more than playing. I really do. And like, it's so meaningful. And, I see that in you as you develop these relationships and you not only like helping them in cross country and running and track and indoor, but like as people, you're growing people. And like, is there any like aha moment that you've had that was like, this is it, where like, this is how I help people more or anything like that?
When I was in college, I was, it was my, I had an extra semester of eligibility, so I graduated in 97, and I had redshirted my freshman year in college, which back then was pretty common for a lot of athletes. And, I was the number one guy on our cross-country team, but we weren't very good, and we weren't really doing great, and I was doing okay. I mean, I'd come off a pretty good track and field season, but I wasn't doing, spectacular, and our team wasn't good, and that was always the biggest thing for me. So we were up in Van Cortlandt Park, which is a pretty famous spot for distance running on the East Coast here. And we were up in Van Cortlandt Park, and I was running in either the Big East Championships or I don't think it was a national qualifier, but I believe it was the Big East Championships. And so we were up there. And I got done with the race, and one of the biggest influences in my life, of course, with many people, is their father. My father was my guy. So, and I went over to him after the race. He said, "You don't look good. You don't look good about what you did there." And I said, "I'm not." I said, I ran good, but I said, "Don't you feel like you're, destined to do something better than this? Like, I just feel like I should do something more than this, So, just inside is the desire, and you try and bring that out of our athletes, and I try and do that with our teams at the school now, through the athletic, responsibilities that I have. But just as a teacher, I try and bring that out, and just as an individual with my own family and people that need it, and I just love to do it. So I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I really need to do something more than this. And so when I started coaching, it started happening a little bit. And I said, man, I'm destined to do something more than this. Like, I know that there's something that should be happening here. And in 2003, we won states in the first year I was coaching. And it was by like the third lowest points is better. It's like golf, right? So we had the third lowest point total in state history. And I'm like standing there, and the minute that I found out that we won it, and my father and I was standing there, and I looked over at him, I said, "Do you remember when we were standing up in Van Cortlandt Park?" And I said, now I know what it was. Like, that's what this was. This was the moment that, like, I was like, this is where all that work comes through. And, it takes a while to develop that stuff. And I loved coaching more than I loved competing too. And I loved to compete because it was fun, and I got to travel places and stuff like that. But I loved seeing other teams and other individuals experience success. And they were so much more successful than me. So it was so awesome to see them do that stuff. And obviously a lot of that is just because of what they were able to do, but just being able to affect that and kind of guide, be the captain of the ship and just kind of guide it through like what they need, and then just let them out there. Because in cross country and track and field and these things, especially in cross country, there's no timeouts. Right, there's no halftime and stuff like that. Once they go, they're gone. And so you're really helpless. You can't just go out there and be like, why aren't you doing this? And so forth. So, it gets to be kind of tough. So those moments that you have, like leading up to that journey is pretty tough, and it's stressful. But you look back at it at the end, you're like, that was really great. That was really difficult to do. So yeah, that's aha stuff, is being able to see those kind of successes. Hey, the kid that ran 18 minutes in a 2-mile time trial, to that stuff, that's a huge success for me. I've had kids break 5 minutes in the mile, and that's not, that's big for a lot of us. I wouldn't be able to do that now. But, for, the elite high school athlete, that's no big thing. That's a miler. But to them, that was a big thing. And I love that. And plus then others feed off of that too. And then you just really have this endless circle, of it just kind of spiraling and so forth. And I truly believe that's still kind of going today. And I'm not the only reason, but those people feeding off of one another. I always tell, to end it, I always tell, I always called other athletes, former athletes, when we won our first boys state title, which I was trying to do. I'm a male, so I was like, we were always trying to do that, and it was a big thing for us. And it was emotional and so forth. We tried to win it a couple of times before that, and we weren't able to do it. And I called the old athletes right after it happened. I said, you're responsible for this.
Yeah.
You're responsible for this. And I'm like, no, we're not. You guys did it. That's great. And I said, no, actually, you're really responsible, because without you guys leading this thing, and, I'm not racing with you, and I'm not out there running that 10-miler with you. I was on my bike or in my car, watching you. That's their responsibility. So it really just kind of feeds off of it. And it still does now. I mean, they take a great interest in what Coach Rome is doing up there at the school in cross country, and what Coach Radzinski's doing in track and field too. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, no, amazing. I mean, to wrap up as we go, I mean, a ton of gems, ton of nuggets that you can gain insight from Coach Matt Samuel. There's, work ethic and perseverance and the culture and just things of helping people and individuals. I think it is amazing. And we thank you for coming on to the show. We like to end it with a couple questions. Right, that we ask. So
easy, maybe easy.
Yeah.
Maybe hard.
The first question is, in Northeast PA, what is your favorite pizza?
Oh man, this is the toughest.
Right?
Pizza is one of my 4 food groups.
Yeah, right.
It is, seriously, and it is difficult to do that. If you got to put me on the spot though, I love Sabatini's.
Yeah,
I do.
Nice.
But I feel like I'm cheating on a girlfriend by saying that, because there's so many great spots to go. But
right.
if you're gonna put me on the spot for one answer there, and it makes it difficult,
Sabatini's.
I'll have to say Sabatini's.
Sabatini's.
Yeah, I'm feeling that.
Fair enough.
Loaded.
Right here, right now, what is the motto that you live by?
Wow.
Or is there one?
I don't know. I'm not a big cliche guy. I kind of just try and I'll tell you what, though. Actually, this kind of ties into that. So don't talk about it, be about it. And that's something I talked about with our basketball teams for the last couple years. That's something anybody can talk themselves into stuff or hope that this is going to happen. I feel like that's a big problem with sports and in life too. Don't talk about it. Be about it.
Yep.
Everything that you are, you should be wearing that on your sleeve.
Yeah.
If you want to know about me, you're going to see what I am. There's no facade there.
Yep.
I'm not going to talk about it and just talk about it. I'm going to do everything in my power.
Sure.
So don't talk about it, be about it. That's
I
Nick,
love that
Nick
motto.
Nacito
So
favorite.
They're
right there.
definitely one of my top mottos right there. Don't talk about it, be about it. You got to be about that action.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So last one here is if you were writing a book, what's the title of that book?
Oh, not a hard one for me either, man. You guys are asking questions. Yeah. Life sure didn't turn out like I thought it would.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Nice.
It's true.
I like
I mean, when I was in college and, it's back to that story. I didn't see myself. When I first started getting into coaching, I was like, I'm going to have this really great guys team and I'm a guy and we're going to do this because you know what? I've always wanted to see this happen. I always wanted to be on a state championship team. And then I met these girls that were just so good and so talented and just really worked well together and became such a tight family and team and group and so forth and just brought a lot of things to our community and to our school and just to everybody. Has affected so many people. So yeah, life sure didn't turn out how I thought it would.
Love it.
And that would be the title.
Love it. Well, hey, another podcast down. Coach, thank you for joining us here. Guys, please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to that 100 mark. So your support would be much appreciated. I'm Josh Mason. This is Matt Flanagan. This is Coach Matt Samuel. Thanks again. We'll catch you on the next episode.
All right.